We are glad to introduce architect Balakrishnan, founder, design and research team, Lidra, Coimbatore, India.
Hi, I'm glad to be part of this Icon Fest 2021, organized by School of Architecture and Interior Design, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai. It is nice to be part of this program, international program, where there are too many scholars, not just many, but too many scholars interacting with the fraternity of architecture, and exchanging their experiences, views and programs. I'm sure this is going to be a wealth of knowledge for all, not just the students, but the fraternity itself. And I'm very glad to be a part of it. The opinion and perception of architecture has been changing from time to time. Initially, it was more of an art and expression. I think all of us know the basic difference between art and architecture. And as you know, art is a form which you can see and enjoy, whereas in architecture, you can see and live inside and enjoy. That's a basic difference that we all know. But when it all began, it was more of an art, a shelter provided with the help of art and related subjects. Now it's more of science and technology. Technology is dominating this field that in course of time, it appears as if architects may not have much of a choice, where everything might be available in the form of scientific provisions that a common man wants. He can immediately choose the internet to have his choices displayed in front of him on a small screen, and all that he wants to have expressed for his let us say premises, all that can be immediately presented by him by such a media, that the involvement of architect may gradually come down. I wouldn't say die down, but there's always a chance for efficient people to come up and succeed. But then those who are on the fringe, those who are at the average level, will all find it difficult in course of time. So the perception has been changing and has posed a lot of challenge, and more so after the development of this COVID issues, which are currently being faced by architectural fraternity. It's going to be pretty tough and difficult. The very term pedagogy itself is comparatively a newer one. It was not used when we all started our career, either as a student or as a professional. But as is very well understood by the present generation of architecture, the changes have been simply fantastic after the advent of the internet. Till such time, it was moving rather slow. And when the profession started itself, people were giving importance to comfort, privacy, economy, and aesthetics. Now, these are all actually are not really seen in that particular perspective, merely because there are a lot of competitions from other brothers professionals in this field. Now we have competition from civil engineers to a very large extent, who are trying to compete with us with the help of internet and computers by trying to promote their own style, which may not have the same amount of value and meaning as we try to propose. Now, if you see over a period of, in my experience, over the period of about 5 decades, it all started with the comfort, basically being the primary issue. Then we used to put economics as the second primary issue, and then privacy as the third primary, and finally ended up with aesthetics. Because aesthetics used to be the last thing. But today it is just the reverse. People start with the facade. They don't talk about what is inside. It's almost like a boy looking for a beautiful girl. In those days the value was more for the character. Today they are looking for the looks. So how these differ, you can definitely make out when you see, especially on comparison with this kind of a personal life to the built form of life. You know, it's very important that we have to realize that in a building there is a subject called a character. The character, it builds it. So there's a proverb in Tamil, "Veetai katti paar, adu unnai kattum." You build the house first, the house builds you next. The traditional buildings always have in a door frame a bottom frame also. If you live in a house with a bottom frame door, you have the tendency to walk over frequently. In course of time you get used to it. A stranger comes and he trips over. You're not used to it. So you use the word, build the house first and house builds you next. So as per the proverb, whatever deficiencies are there, you get used to that environment. You will never know that there is a deficiency at all. What happens in today's way of architectural planning is more of that than as it used to be, where we used to think about intricate issues. So now what happens, generally we are talking about architecture, but there was always an experience to share in the form of traditional architecture. We all call them as vernacular. But in the field of vernacular, we have a particular type of detailing developed by sustainable techniques, by sustainable methods, with using sustainable materials. Now, if you think, can we practice this kind of technique in the modern day context? Well, it is questionable. I fully agree. People may not go by that particular standard. If you see ancient India, we had residences abutting the road. There used to be open spaces on the rear side. The activities used to be basically behind the main building, and you always have the entire road absolutely dead with no activity but for the interactions they may have for social purposes. But today a man wants everything. He wants to have every inch of the space that he has, that he abuts the road, he abuts a neighbor and builds it everywhere, not knowing its difficulty, the problems which he will face in course of time. That's what happens. You can see by just walking along any of these commercial streets, whether it is Kashmir or Kanyakumari. This is an observation which I have seen right from Srinagar down to Kanyakumari. People always want to exploit every such thing. It's a question of exploitation, but not proper attitude and aptitude. So now this is something we have to keep in mind. When you talk in terms of the specific words of architecture, as I told in the beginning, you have varied applications which has been changing over a period of time. It has branched out. Architecture, where it was a wholesome single topic initially, now it's got varied topics. You have a green building concept, you have got sustainable concept, you have got energy efficient concept, and you have the traditional styles. All that are all branches that has developed. So when one educates himself into architecture, you can always take as a sub branch and concentrate on that. It was all not like that in those days. It is comparable to a medical profession, where one doctor in the exteriors used to be concise, and he used to be very precise in his knowledge in solving medical issues. Now what happens today, a man is specialist for nerves, another man is a specialist for bone, another man for eye, one for the ear. So it is all got ranked. You ask a man who is specialized in ear, he will say that I do not know anything about heart. I am not a specialist. So you better go to a specialist. That's what the advice they will give. Because that is the only sub-area of specialization. So you may get in course of time architects who are specialized only in energy efficiency, architects who are specialized only in sustainable projects. So this is what's going to be the present scenario. And again, whereas this is a form of changes that we have seen, the most important thing that we have to keep in mind is the challenges that is going to be posed by the current situation, that is both by the internet and by uninvited situation like the COVID. I'm sure all of you will agree that this is an inevitable experience, and this is a subject of debate in many of the professional groups where most of us are all members. In our family, there is a practice of performing a particular puja. In one segment of it, there is a rhyme which means, I am visible to you all the time, but you are not able to see me. I am visible to you, but you are not able to see me. The problem is you have not raised your status to see me. That is what it is from. So actually it's a term given, the statement given by God, wherein the God says, I am always visible to you, but you have to raise your status, so that at some level you raise your status and able to see. In our normal way of life, especially those who are in India and more so in South India, we all have a practice that is, when you trip on something, an object, to be very specific, immediately our hand automatically reaches that object and will follow up with an action as if that we are going to say sorry. We apologetically do that. In my opinion, this is more prevalent in Tamil Nadu. That is because God, according to this particular truth, is present, omnipresent in every form of life, whether it is a living thing or a non-living thing. Even if you trip on a furniture, we tend to do that. So the earlier statement which I told you refers to the God is present to us in the form of solids. Whatever that is three-dimensional is a solid. According to Ganapati Sthapati, a famous exponent of traditional architecture, anything that is visible to our eye has to be in a three-dimensional form. In other words, anything that is single-dimensional to a two-dimensional are not visible to the eye. So when God in his omnipresent form emphasizes advising us to raise our status, it is a question of going closer to the divine. But here, by normal means, the statement impresses that we should try to see God in everything, whether it is living or non-living. So in our understanding or the perception of the three-dimensional object that is around us, first you must learn that objects need attention. Objects have energy. There is nothing like a waste on the universe. The energy is present in some form or other in everything that is visible to us. It is the energy that propels a rocket into the space and continues its operation. It is only because of energy. So in our Indian system of philosophical science, we think of these energies as a godly form and use it a form, and we try to pray them. And more understanding is needed if we have to go deeper. So I'm not going into the depth of it. I'll slightly come back to the topic which I had really wanted to tell. So in my experience, when I started my career after my graduation, I was working in a firm where in one of the projects which was under execution, the owner of the project was very badly mentally and physically affected. So what happened, some of his friends brought a village mendicant who is supposed to be predicting things by looking at that particular object or thing which I am now referring here. Now in this case it is a building in which that particular owner has or is undergoing several issues. The man refuses to enter that premises, saying that there are a lot of deficiencies in that building. It was for a man who was not thought about in this angle, one who was talked only about planning, designing, conceptual approach, etc., etc. Suddenly a man comes to look at a building and talks about it and says there are holistically there are some errors leading to some problems the owner is facing. Was sort of an issue that made me think. Then what happened? Subsequently, I started following this person wherever he went, and wherever there were issues, this man was invited, and he used to give predictions about by just seeing at the building. So, which I felt was necessary to probe further and think about it. Now, in my experience, I have observed that a parent always wants to bring up their child by educating the child from its basics and teach them as much as possible. In Tamil, we call this education through padippu. The term padi refers to two. One is step, the other is education. You educate yourself about something by various means. One way of learning or educating yourself is to learn through a guru. Invariably, your first guru is your mother. After you learn through a guru, you try to learn more and more in a shortest form that is possible. But any other way of it is going to be a direct experience. That is, you learn it by direct experience instead of learning from a guru. In this way, you will probably know that fire is very hard. By putting your hand into it and learn it that way, it's a very hard way of learning it. But the best way of learning is by observing. What happens if there's a fire and there's a small fly falling on that and it gets burnt? It teaches you a lesson that fire is a harmful thing. So we always learn these issues. So what happens is in our normal life, the parent always wants to educate the child through different means. And one of the means is to learn through a process of education. We call it as padippu in Tamil. And that is the reason why in every residence, the first element that you step in is a step. And there is a proverb in Tamil which says, Padi illada veedu urupadadu. Urupadi means an object. Urupadadu means object is not there. So if there is a house built without any step, that house will have no purposeful application to our way of life. In South India, covering the states of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka and Andhra, we have a common approach to the traditional vernacular style of architecture. In all these states, we have the concept of courtyard-based houses, where the house does not have a ventilation from the exterior, but gets it from the sky down inside. Now, if you see the planning, you have a row of steps leading you to the main door. That main door in Tamil is called Nilai. Once you open the Nilai, it takes you to a small walkway. We call it as Nadai. When you go through that Nadai, it takes you to a courtyard, which we call it as Kudam. Kudam here refers to society. And it must, whatever that you have learned through the process of learning, after attaining the status, a particular status of maturity, you walk through, that is, you practice it in your life with the help of the society or share it with the society. If you happen to lead a life like this, it assures Veedu Peru Inbam. That is why a house has been termed in Tamil as Veedu. I am very happy to share my view on this, though it's going to be very brief for the present. The term Vastu is largely prevalent for the last 3 to 4 decades. In the south, it was called more as Manayadi. It refers to every foot that is provided within the 4 walls. The term Vastu, which is basically a Sanskrit word, has two meanings. One is Vasatu, a place where live in. Another is Vastu, means the signs of the solid. The signs of the solid, namely in our present question, the house, is the place where we live in. So this whole philosophy of Vastu refers to our life in a built environment. For a very long time, people always, if you go to the rural areas, especially towns which are connected to temples, you will always find roads in the east-west direction, and at either end of the roads there will be temples, and invariably the houses will be facing north-south. That is how traditional planning has been. When the sizes of the rural area grow bigger, when they become a smaller town, the planning was more quadrangular. We had the temple in its geometrical center with the 4 quadrants minimum going around it, each one having people based on their career, that is the working career. If you are a soldier, you used to be in one quadrant. If you are a farmer, you used to be in one quadrant. If you are a trader, you used to be in another quadrant. If you are a man who is related to administration and other religious activity, that is how it was all. So when you see, either it was centered around a temple or connected by means of a temple with houses facing north-south. When the predominant planning was north-south facing, they always used to locate the kitchen on the right side when you face the house from within, on the right side, on the rear. So invariably kitchen will come either to the southeast or to the northwest. Now, if we normally observe based on the 5 elements of planning, the fire is to be located in the southeast and in the northwest. So automatically kitchen gets located in the correct place. Everything will find its own place in the correct. ஒரு வீட்டில் சமையல் அடுப்பு கரெக்டாக வச்சுட்டோம்னா மற்றெல்லாம் இருக்கிற இடத்துல நான் உட்காரும்போது சரியாகவே வந்துடும். இது நம்மளுடைய basic approach. So in our basic planning and approaches, importance is given to the place where the lady of the house spends maximum of her time. See that her health is maintained by locating the appropriate room in the appropriate location. Okay. So now, when you're talking about Vastu or Manadi, whatever it is, the importance is given to the 5 elements which are our rulers. They rule our body, they rule our universe, they rule the built environment as well. Hello everyone. You would have had a brief of a different angle of viewing architecture from myself, where I have tried to put in brief, or let us say in a nutshell, certain of my experience that led me to go in depth on this philosophy of the built environment in the traditional way. We call it as vernacular architecture, we call it as Manadi, we also call it as Vastu, and whatever it is, they are ultimately governed by the 5 elements of nature, namely fire, air, earth, space and water. And if an understanding has to be reached on what these elements are and how they are to be placed, it is based on the 8 cardinal directions. And you can go in deeper into the subjects in course of time for us to understand. And in my present introductory part, I have made, I have simply touched these points, and I'm extremely thankful to SRM Institute of Science and Technology and the organizers of ICON 2021, and give me the opportunity to talk my view of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Architect Balakrishnan, for sharing your insightful thoughts with our audience today. We will now move on to a short sponsor break.
Regular cement takes 28 days to make an airstrip. This one just took 4. Yes, it is the technology of the future, brought to us today by Dalmia Cement. And I'm building my house with the same.
Dalmia Cement. Future today.
I'm a forest ranger and I don't allow any interference in the jungles. But this wildlife corridor was needed, so we built it with the world's greenest cement, Dalmia. And now I'm building my own house with the same.
Dalmia Cement. Future today.
An 8-foot slab of concrete that can take a load of 500 tons, moving at such speed. Yes, it's the technology of the future. Brought to us today by the pioneers of sleeper cement, Dalmia. And I'm building my house with the same.
Dalmia Cement. Future today.